Hello, this is Domenico with Easynomics, and this will likely be the last video where I've been dissecting an article illustrating the impact of the Russian-Ukrainian crisis on global supplies of wheat, how it's impacting, in this case, a particular country like Egypt that's very dependent on wheat imports. In particular, we looked at a paragraph within that article, and there'll be a link to this article in the video notes below, where we see an application for competitive supply, where here we can see that wheat competes with crops such as maize, soybeans, rapeseed, and cotton. In the previous video, we were seeing the links between perfectly competitive market structures and competitive supply. There'll be a link in the top right corner to this video explanation, where in graph A, the industry or the global wheat market, we see the reduced supply of wheat in the global market as a result of the Russo-Ukrainian war, and how that drives price in the world market up for wheat. And that becomes the price that all firms must take, which is in graph B. In a competitive supply model, you'll just be illustrating the supply curve, which I've highlighted here. But we can see that there's other layers of complexity to the model once we get to perfect competition. So here we can see that this firm starting at point C, they're maximizing their profit where MR equals MC, and then the price rises from P1 to P2, and they're incentivized to increase the quantity supplied from point C to point D. And we use this example of a farmer maybe allocating about 50% of their land to wheat and 50% of their land to soybeans. And so they're going to produce more wheat, 75% of their land towards wheat. There's less land for soybeans, and that would reduce the supply of soybeans for that individual farmer. So in competitive supply, we'd have three supply curves, S3 here, 4 and 5, and how an increase in price from P1 to P2 increases quantity supplied, but reduces supply of the competing good, in this case, soybeans. This video is going to look at what happens when price falls, or the reasons why price would fall. Price falling, the impact on the individual farmer or firm, and how the supply curve for the competing good would shift out. So that's what we're going to illustrate in this video. So again, here we can see wheat prices and how the Russo-Ukraine war increased the price of wheat. But then we also see that the price has collapsed. It fell. There's two reasons that we'll go over. One of them being a deal that was struck between Russia and Ukraine with the help of Turkey to resume wheat exports from Ukraine into the world market. But also in theory, we'd also expect theoretically the price to fall. And then we'll talk about that in this video. With the price of wheat falling, we also see that the price of corn is falling. Soybean prices also falling. Rapeseed prices also falling. And cotton prices also falling. So that's what this video is going to go over, the reasons why the price is falling through the use of a theoretical model. Probably the biggest reason as to why the price of all of those food commodities are falling is the Black Sea Grain Initiative. Again, a deal that was struck between Russia and Ukraine, with Turkey mediating along with the United Nations, which resumed supplies of wheat being exported from Ukraine into the world market. So that would increase the supply, reduce the price. So let's go ahead and illustrate that. So here's the model that we used in the previous video. And again, there's a link in the top right corner on how to draw this. This video is going to just look at what happens when price falls. So our starting point in graph A will be at point B. Our starting point, here I'll use a different color, point B. Our starting point in graph B is going to be at point D. And our starting point in graph C is going to be at point G. Okay, so that's our starting point. So let's go ahead and analyze this. Due to that agreement between Russia and Ukraine, mediated by Turkey, where Ukraine could increase or export their supplies of wheat into the world market, that would lead to an increase in the supply of wheat in the world market that would shift S2 to S1. And with that new intersection at point A, where S1 equals D1, we see a fall in the price of wheat from P2 to P1. For those that studied perfect competition, there's also another theoretical reason as to why the price would be falling and the supply would be increasing. At the same time, in theory, the higher price of wheat incentivizes farmers to increase their quantity supplied from Q3 to Q4 or from point C to point D to generate supernormal profit. And that supernormal profit is highlighted or shaded in brown here. We're at Q4, as stated here, at Q4, we see that the average revenue, right? Remember that P2 equals D2 equals AR2. Average revenue is greater than average total costs, P2 greater than C1. So that means that wheat farmers are generating abnormal or supernormal profit. In theory, the abnormal supernormal profit attracts more competition, attracts more farmers to switch away from, let's say, soybeans, cotton, rapeseed, etc., and start producing more wheat. So collectively, all around the world, we're seeing more and more farmers switching towards wheat production to increase their quantity supply to capture that abnormal profit. Well, if all farmers around the world are doing that, that is also another reason as to why the world supply curve is increasing from S2 to S1. Again, setting a new equilibrium where S1 equals D1 at point A, where we see the reduced price. The reduced price that we saw in this trading economics website that's tracking these prices. All right. Probably the significant reason why this is falling is due to the Black Sea Grain Initiative, but also in theory, the higher prices attracts more farmers worldwide to produce wheat, and they collectively increase the global supply, which would also drive the price down. Fine. So the supply has shifted out in graph A from S2 to S1, driving price back down. For farmers that are producing wheat, now they're going to reduce their quantity of supply of wheat because price is falling from P2 to P1. So they're going to go from point D to point C. Quantity supplied decreasing along their S3 curve here to point C. So quantity supply decreasing from Q4 to Q3. As a result of their reduction in the quantity supplied, it frees up land that can be allocated towards the production of other goods. So let's say that since they're reducing their quantity supply of wheat, now farmers, instead of just using 75% of their land for wheat production, let's say they're going to use 50% of their land for wheat production, which frees up more land for, in this case, soybean production. So here we see more land resources being allocated towards soybeans, so that would increase the supply of soybeans. So if that's the case, then in graph C, the firm generating soybeans, the supply would increase from S5 to S4, which would drive down the price of soybeans from P4 to P3 at point E, where S4 equals D3. So here we see that application of competitive supply right here, where if price falls, quantity supplied falls for wheat in this case, and supply of soybeans increasing from S5 to S4. So in competitive supply, all right, do I have competitive? Yep, competitive supply right here. We see that if price falls, in this case for wheat, then supply will increase for the other competing good, and vice versa. If price increases, then supply would decrease. Okay, so I'm just going to go over this. I would analyze it as I would for paper exam, and then we're done. As can be seen, we're illustrating the connections between perfectly competitive market structures and competitive supply. We're looking at wheat versus soybean production and the impact of the Russian-Ukrainian war on commodity market prices. In graph A, we're illustrating the industry or the global wheat market. Graph B, we're looking at the firm or an individual wheat farmer. In graph C, we're looking at another firm, the individual farmer generating soybeans. On the y-axis, we're measuring price, cost, revenue, and on the x-axis, we're measuring quantity in all three graphs. In graph A, our initial starting point is where S2 equals D1 at point B with an equilibrium price at P2. P2 becomes the perfectly elastic price that the firm in graph B must accept. And we see that P2 is equal to demand 2 equal to AR2 equal to MR2 equal to MB2. And since we assume that the firm is going to profit maximize, we'll produce where MR equals MC. That occurs at Q4. And at Q4, we see that the price is greater than the cost, or AR is greater than ATC. So the firm is generating supernormal profit. The supernormal profit is shaded in this brown boxed area. Supernormal profit will attract more firms into wheat production and into the industry. So as farmers switch away from, let's say, soybean production towards wheat production, collectively trying to take advantage of that supernormal profit, they will increase the global supply of wheat. Thus, in graph A, the supply of wheat increases from S2 to S1, setting an equilibrium at point A, which drives price down from P2 to P1 and increases the quantity supplied and demanded from Q2 to Q1. That becomes the reduced perfectly elastic price that all wheat farmers must accept. It falls from P2 to P1 in graph B. Thus, farmers seeking to profit maximize or minimize losses will reduce the quantity supplied from point D to point C along the S3 curve, or from Q4 to Q3. And at point C, we see that the firm is generating normal profit since AR is equal to ATC, and they're still profit maximizing because MR is equal to MC. As farmers reduce the quantity supplied for wheat, it frees up land on their farms to produce other crops, let's say, for example, soybeans. So more land being allocated towards soybean production leads to, in graph C, an increase in the supply of soybeans from S5 to S4. Assuming that we're holding price constant, but in this case, since we have demand, that sets a new equilibrium where S4 equals D3 at point E, with a fall in the price of soybeans. Okay, so that model, again, can help us understand why we see price falling across wheat, corn, soybeans, rapeseed, cotton. It's predominantly due to the Black Sea Grain Initiative, but it's also a result of some theoretical aspects of what's happening worldwide, with farmers perhaps switching away from wheat production as the price falls, and allocating more land towards soybean production, cotton production, etc. So that reduces the supply in the world market. If you have any questions, feel free to comment those questions below, and don't forget to subscribe and to like. Thank you so much.